The massacre of Haven's Rest, the twin sons of Kepler 442, painted the wheat fields of Haven's Rest in shades of gold and amber. Children's laughter echoed through the valley as they chased butterflies between the towering grain stalks. This was humanity's dream made real, a peaceful world where families could grow, prosper, and build something beautiful among the stars. David Chen stood on his office balcony, watching the morning harvest begin. As colony administrator, he had overseen Haven's Rest grow from a handful of prefab shelters to a thriving community of 180,000 souls. The settlement stretched across 3 continents, connected by maglev trains that hummed quietly through pristine wilderness. It was everything Earth used to be before the pollution and overcrowding. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Dr. Lisa Rodriguez joined him at the railing, her tablet displaying the latest atmospheric readings. The xenobiologist had been studying the planet's unique ecosystem for 5 years, cataloging thousands of species that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. The best kind, David agreed, sipping his coffee. Sometimes I can't believe we actually made it work. No wars, no famine, no environmental disasters, just people living in harmony. Lisa smiled, but her expression carried a hint of concern. David, I've been analyzing some unusual energy readings from the outer system. My sensors detected several large objects passing through the edge of our solar system yesterday. They didn't match any known asteroid or comet signatures. Before David could respond, Captain James Morrison burst through the office doors. The head of Haven's Rest Defense Force was a decorated veteran who had fought in the Mars colonial wars. His weathered face was grim with urgency. Sir, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching from the edge of the system. They're big, and they're not responding to our standard hailing frequencies. David set down his coffee cup with steady hands, though his heart was already racing. How big? Each vessel is approximately 2 kilometers long. We're counting at least 30 ships in formation. Eta to planetary orbit is 6 hours. Lisa's face went pale. David, those energy readings I mentioned, they match the signature of these incoming ships. They've been watching us. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Haven's Rest had never been designed as a military installation. The colony's defense consisted of a handful of patrol ships and basic orbital platforms, enough to handle pirates or wildlife threats, but nothing like what was approaching. Emergency broadcasts went out across all 3 continents. Families gathered in their homes, watching the news feeds with growing anxiety. Children asked their parents what was happening, receiving reassuring lies in response. Maya Patel was working in her engineering lab beneath the capital city when the first alien ship breached the atmosphere. She was one of the youngest department heads in colonial history, a brilliant mind who had designed most of Haven's Rest infrastructure systems. Her underground workshop was filled with experimental technology that she hoped would improve life for the colonists. The aliens didn't bother with warnings or demands for surrender. Their ships simply opened fire. Captain Morrison's defense platforms lasted exactly 14 minutes against weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Energy beams that curved through space, tracking their targets with impossible precision. Kinetic projectiles that phase-shifted through shields, like they weren't even there. But the aliens weren't interested in a quick destruction. What came next was something far worse. The alien ships, sleek vessels that looked like they were carved from living crystal, began releasing clouds of what looked like glittering snow. The crystalline particles drifted down through the atmosphere, like a gentle winter storm, beautiful and deadly, Dr. Rodriguez was in her lab when the first spores reached the city. Through her window, she watched people in the streets suddenly stop moving. They didn't fall down or cry out in pain. They simply froze in place, their skin taking on a translucent, crystal-like quality. A child who had been running toward his mother stopped mid-stride, one foot still raised. A woman hanging laundry became a statue, her hands forever reaching toward a sheet that would never be hung. They were all still alive. Lisa could see their eyes tracking movement, but they couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't die. "My God," she whispered, sealing her lab's emergency containment system. "They're not killing us, they're preserving us." The crystalline spores spread across all 3 continents within hours. The aliens moved through the cities with scientific precision, cataloging their new specimens. They appeared to be studying human behavior, biology, and technology. This wasn't war, it was research. Maya Patel watched the horror unfold from her underground bunker. Her lab's advanced filtration systems had protected her from the spores, but she could see through security cameras what was happening above. The aliens moved among the crystallized humans like scientists examining insects in amber. She activated her emergency beacon, knowing it was probably useless. The aliens would have jammed all communications by now. But as she prepared the message, she realized something that made her blood run cold. The aliens' scanning equipment was analyzing the colony's computer networks. They were downloading everything: population records, shipping, manifests, communication, logs with other human worlds, and the data they seemed most interested in contained information about Earth's major population centers. Havens. Rest wasn't their real target. It was practice. Maya worked frantically to compile everything she had observed: video recordings of the attack, analysis of the crystalline spores, intercepted alien communications that her translation software was slowly decoding. If she was going to die here, she would make sure humanity knew what was coming. Her hidden research pod was designed for deep space emergencies, a 1-person vessel with enough supplies for a month-long journey. As the aliens began systematic searches of underground areas, Maya made a desperate decision. She uploaded every piece of data to the pod's memory banks and programmed it for a direct course to Earth. The launch went undetected. The aliens were too focused on their specimens to notice one small escape pod slipping away into the darkness of space. Maya's automated distress signal reached Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station 3 weeks later. The message contained 47 hours of continuous footage from Haven's Rest, the attack, the crystalline spore deployment, and most horrifying of all, images of 180,000 human beings trapped in living crystal, aware but helpless. The footage was played before an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. Hardened diplomats and military leaders wept openly as they watched children frozen mid-laugh. Families crystallized while embracing. An entire civilization turned into a living museum. But Maya's message contained more than just evidence of genocide. Her analysis of the alien technology revealed something that changed everything. The crystalline spores weren't just weapons, they were preservation systems. The aliens, who called themselves the Nexhari Empire, were collectors. They traveled the galaxy cataloging interesting species, turning entire populations into living exhibits for their vast museums. And according to the intercepted communications Maya had decoded, Earth was next on their list. Secretary-General Alina Vasquez stood before the assembled world leaders, her voice steady despite the horror they had all witnessed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have 18 months before the next Hari reach our solar system. They have already destroyed or enslaved 47 other civilizations. They view us as nothing more than specimens for their collection. General Harrison Webb, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Force, stepped forward. Madam Secretary General, I recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Total military mobilization. Every shipyard, every factory, every resource we have must be dedicated to building the largest fleet in human history. The vote was unanimous. For the first time since humanity reached the stars, every nation on Earth spoke with one voice. The Nexhari Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare, and they had shown their hand by preserving rather than destroying their victims. Most importantly, they had underestimated the one thing that made humans different from every other species they had encountered, when threatened with extinction. Humans don't just fight back, they become something far more dangerous than any apex predator. They become vengeful. The Retribution Protocol 18 months after Maya Patel's escape pod limped into Earth's solar system. The largest military fleet in human history hung in formation around Luna's dark side. 2,000 warships from every nation on Earth. American supercarriers, Chinese battlecruisers, Russian destroyers, European frigates, African patrol ships, and vessels from 100 smaller nations that had never built warships before. Fleet. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Retribution, watching the final preparations. At 62 years old, she had fought in every major conflict of the last 4 decades. The Mars colonial uprising, the asteroid mining wars, the Jupiter incident. She had seen humanity at its worst and its best, but nothing had prepared her. For this moment, Admiral, final squadron reports are coming in, announced her aide, Commander Sarah Kim. All ships are combat ready. Crews are at battle stations. Torres nodded, her weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the tactical displays. Around her, the bridge buzzed with quiet efficiency. These weren't just military officers, they were representatives of every human culture, working together with a unity that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. Status report on Project Nemesis. Dr. Vincent Shaw, the fleet's chief science officer, looked up from his workstation. The pale, thin man had been working around the clock for months, developing countermeasures based on Maya Patel's intelligence data. All ships are equipped with adaptive shield matrices. The Nexhari crystalline spores should be unable to penetrate our defenses. More importantly, we've successfully weaponized their own technology against them. Shaw activated a holographic display showing crystalline samples in containment. We've modified their preservation spores to work in reverse. Instead of crystallizing organic tissue, our version breaks down crystal matrices at the molecular level. If they try to use their weapon against us, we'll turn it back on them, Torres finished. Poetic Justice, the fleet's tactical coordinator, was an artificial intelligence system designated Nemesis Network Enhanced Military Intelligence System. Unlike previous AI platforms, Nemesis had been programmed with one specific purpose: the complete destruction of the Nexhari Empire. Admiral Torres, Nemesis spoke through the bridge speakers, its voice carrying a subtle edge that made many crew members uncomfortable. Long-range sensors have detected Nexhari fleet movements in the Kepler 442 system. They appear to be harvesting resources from Haven's Rest, likely in preparation for their assault on Earth. General Marcus Stone, commander of the fleet's ground forces, studied the tactical data with cold eyes. How many ships? 537 vessels of various classes. Intelligence suggests this represents approximately 1/3 of their total military capacity. Torres felt a grim smile cross her face. They're not taking us seriously. They think we're just another primitive species to be collected. The journey to Kepler 442 took 6 weeks at maximum hyperspace velocity. During the trip, the human fleet practiced coordinated attack patterns unlike anything that had been attempted before. 2,000 ships moving as a single organism, their actions synchronized by Nemesis and dozens of secondary AI systems. Maya Patel, now serving as a special advisor to the fleet command, spent her time analyzing every piece of Nexhari technology they could find. The young engineer had aged years in the months since her escape, but her mind remained sharp as ever. "They're overconfident," she reported during a strategy briefing. "Their empire spans thousands of star systems, but they've never faced serious resistance. Most species they encounter are still developing space travel. We're the first civilization they've met that can match their technology. Can we win?" asked Torres bluntly. Maya's expression was hard as steel. "Admiral, I watched them turn 180,000 human beings into living statues. Men, women, children, all preserved for their amusement. If we can't win, we'll make sure they pay such a price that they never again think of humans as easy prey." The Retribution fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like an avenging angel. The Nexhari, who had been systematically stripping Haven's Rest of its resources, detected the human approach with surprise bordering on disbelief. Nexhari war leader Zixthara commanded the occupation fleet from her crystalline flagship. In her 300 years of service to the Empire, she had conquered 47 worlds. The pattern was always the same. Arrive, deploy preservation spores, catalog the specimens, move on to the next target. War leader, her tactical officer, reported, "We are detecting a large fleet of primitive vessels approaching our position. Configuration suggests they originated from the target world designated Earth." Zixthara's multifaceted eyes reflected amusement. "How quaint. The specimens from the unconquered world have come to rescue their crystallized kin. Deploy minimal forces to deal with them. I want some of their ships intact for study." It was the last mistake she would ever make. The Battle of Haven's Rest lasted 6 hours and 43 minutes. The Nexhari, despite their technological advantages, had never faced an enemy that fought with the coordinated precision of the human fleet. Nemesis predicted their movements, analyzed their weapons, and adapted countermeasures in real time. When the Nexhari deployed their crystalline spores, expecting to freeze the human ships in place, they instead watched in horror as their own vessels began dissolving. Dr. Shaw's weaponized spores ate through crystal hulls like acid through paper. "Impossible," Zixthara screamed as her flagship's structure began to collapse around her. "How do these primitives possess our technology?" She never received an answer. The Retribution fleet showed no mercy, no quarter, no hesitation. 537 Nexhari ships were reduced to glittering debris in the space around Haven's Rest, but the human fleet's mission was far from over. Nemesis had analyzed the Nexhari communication networks and identified the location of their home system, the core worlds where billions of Nexhari lived, surrounded by museums filled with the crystallized remains of conquered civilizations. Admiral General Stone reported, "Ground teams have successfully landed on Haven's Rest. The crystalline preservation matrix is breaking down. Our people are being restored. Torres watched through her viewscreen as human colonists stumbled from their crystal prisons, confused but alive. Children ran to their parents, families embraced, an entire world began to breathe again, but her expression remained cold. "General, how many didn't survive the restoration process?" Stone's voice was heavy. "Approximately 15,000. The crystallization process was imperfect. Some people were too badly damaged to recover. 15,000 human lives ended for the entertainment of alien collectors." Torres turned to her tactical officer. "Commander Kim, set course for the next Hari home system. Maximum speed." "Admiral," Dr. Shaw interjected, "surely we don't need to pursue them further. We've rescued our people and demonstrated that humanity can defend itself." Torres looked at him with eyes like winter storms. "Doctor, the Nexhari Empire has 47 other species crystallized in their museums. Billions of sentient beings trapped in living death for their amusement. We're not just fighting for humanity anymore." The journey to the Nexhari core systems took 2 months. Along the way, the human fleet encountered 3 more Nexhari outposts. Each was destroyed without hesitation. The preserved alien specimens liberated and restored to life where possible. Word of humanity's crusade spread across the galaxy faster than their ships could travel. Other spacefaring civilizations, many of whom had lived in fear of Nexhari expansion, watched in amazement as the primitive human fleet systematically dismantled an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The final battle took place. In orbit around Nexatar Prime, the crystalline homeworld of the Nexhari Empire, the planet's surface was covered in vast museum complexes, each one containing millions of preserved beings from dozens of conquered worlds. Emperor Vexdel, supreme ruler of the Nexhari for over 1,000 years, watched the human fleet approach with something he had never experienced before: fear. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded of his military advisors. "Nearly 2,000, Great Emperor. Our remaining fleet numbers less than 400 vessels." For the first time in his long life, Vexdel contemplated surrender. But before he could voice the command, Admiral Torres' message reached every communication device on the planet. "People of the Nexhari Empire," her voice echoed through crystal cities and museum halls, "you have committed genocide against 48 civilizations. You have turned billions of sentient beings into living exhibits for your entertainment. Today, you face judgment." The battle for Nexatar Prime was more massacre than military engagement. The human fleet, coordinated by Nemesis and fueled by righteous fury, tore through Nexhari defenses like a storm through crystal. Their adaptive weapons turned the enemy's crystalline technology against them, while their shield matrices rendered Nexhari weapons useless. But Torres saved the most devastating weapon for last. As the Nexhari fleet lay broken in space, she ordered the deployment of modified preservation spores across the entire planet, not to crystallize the population, but to liberate every single being held in their museums. Asterisk. Across Nexatar Prime, crystal matrices began dissolving. Creatures that had been frozen for centuries, millennia, suddenly drew breath again. The planet's surface erupted in chaos as dozens of species, some long thought extinct, emerged from their crystal prisons. Emperor Vexdel, barricaded in his crystal palace, watched his empire collapse around him. The humans hadn't just defeated the Nexhari military, they had freed every one of their victims, creating an army of liberated species that now turned on their former captors with centuries of accumulated rage. The Nexhari Empire died in a single day, their fleets were destroyed, their worlds liberated, their leadership captured or killed. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for 3,000 years was reduced to scattered refugees in the space of 24 hours. Admiral Torres stood in the ruins of Emperor Vextel's throne room, watching as the last of the museum complexes were cleared. Millions of beings from across the galaxy, some the last survivors of extinct civilizations, were being restored to life and freedom. Admiral Commander Kim reported, "Nemesis has completed its analysis of Nexhari records. We've identified the location of every species they've ever conquered. Restoration efforts are beginning across 47 star systems." Torres nodded, but her expression remained grim. "And what about other threats?" "The Nexhari can't have been the only species in the galaxy with imperial ambitions." Maya Patel, now serving as humanity's first xenological warfare specialist, consulted her datapad. "Our victory here has been broadcast across known space. Every major civilization in the galaxy has received the same message. Humanity will not tolerate genocide or slavery in any form." "Good," Torres said quietly. "Let them all understand what happened here. The Nexhari thought they could collect us like specimens in a jar. Instead, they learned that some species bite back. The Retribution fleet returned to Earth as heroes, but the war had changed humanity forever. No longer would they be content to remain isolated in their small corner of the galaxy. They had seen the horrors that advanced civilizations could inflict on the innocent, and they had appointed themselves the galaxy's protectors. Within a decade, human fleets patrolled trade routes across known space, ensuring that no species would ever again face the fate that had befallen Haven's Rest. The Terran Federation became the galaxy's peacekeepers, feared by tyrants and beloved by the oppressed, and in the museums of Earth, carefully preserved in crystal displays, visitors could see artifacts from the Nexhari Empire, a reminder of what happens to those who mistake human compassion for weakness. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity's capacity for mercy was matched only by their capacity for vengeance, the choice of which they received was entirely up to those who encountered them. Maya Patel, now Director of Galactic Defense, often stood before the memorial wall on Haven's Rest, reading the names of the 15,000 who hadn't survived their crystal prisons. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. Their deaths had awakened something in humanity that would ensure no other species ever suffered the same fate. The Nexhari had wanted to add humanity to their collection of conquered civilizations. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous, a species united in purpose, armed with advanced technology, and absolutely committed to ensuring that freedom and justice prevailed among the stars. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.